Okie dokie. In this problem, they tell us the strength, S, of a wooden beam depends on the width and the depth of a rectangular cross-section of a beam, but not on the length of the beam. For a particular type of wood, the value of S is proportional to the product of the width and the square of the depth. It's very wordy, but we'll talk about that. Suppose the strength of an oak beam is 196 when the beam is 14 inches wide and 5 inches deep. Determine the strength of the largest beam that can be cut from a 10-inch diameter oak tree, given the beam must be 4 inches wide. And remember, if y is proportional to x, there's a constant k such that y equals k times x. Okay, so let's start with this line here. So the value of S is proportional to the product of width and square of the depth. Okay, so the value of S, in other words, S equals, S is proportional, meaning S is going to equal k times whatever they're talking about. So proportional to the product, so the multiplication of the width, W, and the square of the depth. So the depth squared, the depth to the power of 2. Okay, so we set up this equation using the information they give us. Then they say, suppose the strength is 196. So S is 196. We don't know what K is. Then they say it's the beam is 14 inches wide. So W is 14. And then the depth is 5. And then we want to make sure to square the depth. So I'm assuming we want to use this first to solve for K. So we'll have 196 equals k times, and now if we can just calculate what 14 times 5 squared is, let's do that with Siri. 14 times 5 squared.
It's 350.
Beautiful. Now to get k by itself, we just divide by 350. 196 divided by 350.
It's 0.56.
Beautiful. Alrighty. So now that we have our k value, what else do they ask us? So they say determine the strength. So we're looking for S. I'm going to move this stuff over a little bit. They say determine the strength that can be cut from a 10-inch diameter oak tree. Oak tree, given that the beam must be 4 inches wide. Okay, so we know K is 0.56. Keep in mind we're using this here. So K is 0.56. We are given that the width is 4 inches wide, and then they say we have a 10-inch diameter oak tree. So I hope I'm not overthinking this. Hopefully 10 inches in diameter might represent the depth. Hopefully I don't have to overthink this. I'm going to say 10 inches is the depth. We'll see where that gets us. I'm going to calculate all of this together. Let's see if we have any luck. 0.56.
I don't know how to respond.
All right. 0.56 times 4 times 10 squared.
The answer is 224.
All right, so that did not work out. It looks like we're going to have to try something else. Okay. So imagine this. We're looking at a trunk of a tree, or I guess like a beam of wood here. They tell us that a wooden beam depends on the width and depth of the rectangular cross-section of that beam. So right away, the cross-section of a beam like this would be in the shape of a circle. So a cross-section is just another word for a slice of a certain 3D figure here. So if we just took a slice out of this, we'd have some circle. Imagine we're looking at the face of this circle, and what we're trying to do is not just use this circle, but we're trying to get a rectangle out of this cross-section, out of this slice. So some sort of rectangle out of this circle, okay? They tell us that this circle has a diameter, a 10-inch diameter oak tree. So this diameter is 10 inches. So from here to here, from end to end here, diagonal to diagonal, is 10 inches. And they tell us that it should be about 4 inches wide. So we're going to call this the width here, 4 inches wide And what we're looking for is the depth, this depth here. And so what we notice is that we should have a right triangle with width, depth, and hypotenuse, right? So the goal is to find what d is equal to using Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We're going to have 4 squared plus d squared equals c squared, or 10 squared in this case. So it's always a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is the hypotenuse, the longest side of that right triangle. It's the side length that's opposite the right angle, all that stuff. So we're solving for d. We get d squared equals 100 minus 16. So d squared is equal to 84. If we took the square root of that, we'd get square root of 84. But I might just say use d squared equals 84, because look at our equation here. What do we need? We need d squared. We need d, and then we're just going to square it, so we might as well just use the idea that d squared is equal to 84. So now, in place of d squared, let's just plug in 84, okay? So now, if we calculate this, 0.56 times 4 times 84,
That would be 188.16.
188.16, and we do get an answer of 188. That's option D when we break out the eraser. Hope that makes a little bit of sense. That was a little bit of trial and error on my part here. Let's go ahead and do one more example, and let's make it quick. All right. They tell us for a particular type, S is proportional to the product of the width and the square of the depth of the cross-section. So I think it's just the same setup. We have K times W times D squared, okay? Then we use the same ideas. Strength is 16, width is 5, 2 is the depth. So we have 16 equals K times 5 times 2 squared. If we multiply 5 times 2 squared, or 5 times 4, we get 20. So we have K times 20. We solve for K by dividing by 20. We get 16 over 20, which is equivalent to 4/5. Now we set up the same equation. We're determining S, given that K is 4/5, W is 21, and we're looking for D squared once again. So imagine we're looking at a circle. We are fitting a rectangle inside this circle, and we know the width is 21. So we'll call this the width, and we're looking for the depth, this side length, and they tell us that the diameter is 28 inches. So 28 would go here, and we really just find D squared by using that same process. So we use 21 squared plus D squared equals 28 squared. So naturally, we solve for D by, I guess, taking 28 squared minus 21 squared. 28 squared minus 21 squared.
The answer is 343.
343, look at that. And I'm sure the square root of that is something nice, but I don't care. I'm just going to leave it as D squared equals 343. Now, I'm going to use that in place of this D squared, and then I'm going to calculate S. 21 times 343 times 4/5.
That would be 5,762.4.
Beautiful. All right, do we have any luck? 5762 is option B. Break out the eraser to see that B is our answer. Hope that makes some sense. If you have any questions on this process, please let me know. I know it's a little bit strange, but hopefully it's sort of the same process every time, so hopefully it, it's not too bad. All right, here's a little glimpse of the last one as well. All right.